Man, that's crazy to think about. There was also a German band called Gregorian. I know, Hector. There was a lot of stuff. Dude, I remember making mixtapes in the 90s. Hey man, that's how we used to do it. What kind of music do you like, baby? They'll make you a mixtape. Dude, Jesus. I feel old now. I'm literally having flashbacks to like before CDs when you would take. Do you remember the old boom boxes that had two tape decks? And so you would play the tape deck that had the thing on it that you wanted, but then you recorded it on the other tape, and you would all this splicing that went into that. Jesus, it got much easier when CDs happened. Um, oh my goodness. Megan still has one. No. My brother and I were talking about this the other day because I have a younger brother who's 13 years younger than me. He's an accident child. He's 30 some years old right now. I'm 40. I'll be 45 here in a week, and he's 32, 33. He grew up after, like he grew up on the tail end. Like his he was like there was some time when he was a very young child, like 5, 6 years old, he was still watching like VHS tapes that were mine and my other brothers, but he pretty much is a DVD baby, right? And so thinking about like he doesn't know like the VHS thing and like the days of Blockbuster and Hastings and Please Be Kind, Rewind, and needing a VHS player and like the all-in-one TV sets that had VHS players built in, and it's great. It's great, man. Boombox with dual tape deck, says Megan. Alright, we need to go. We could speak with Master Friar. Should probably check the quest journal, because I don't know if any of these are optional. Yes, I can too travel from this location. You cannot fast travel from this location. Yes, I can. Why are you telling me that I can't? Maybe I'm too close to the monastery. There you go. VHS and cassette tapes. TNK's like, everyone's here double my age. It happens, man. Some of us are older. That's the bailiff I actually want to talk to. No. Where's he at?
God bless you. What troubles you?
You look different, Master.
So as to fit in. I don't want it known that I'm in town.
Why?
I don't want to alarm our prey. Gossip spreads quickly, and if those scoundrels learn we're onto them, they'll flee.
That does make sense.
So what have you found out so far?
I found out where they get their quicksilver from. You were right, it was the monastery.
It was the only logical explanation.
It changed hands on the hill behind the monastery.
Have you been there to have a look around?
Not yet.
Maybe it would be worth the time.
That's what I'm
I'll
working
go
on
and
right
see.
now.
And have you found out who's behind it?
Someone called Rapata.
Not much, but it's a start. At least it's not a common name. Listen, Henry, I had another thought on the way here. Those counterfeiters have to have a punch die to make the fake coins.
Yes, of course.
That's sophisticated work. And there's a man I know who works at the monastery yard, Master Engraver Jerome of Silesia.
You don't suppose that he's...
No, not that, God forbid. I know him well. He'd never do anything like that. But he runs an engraving workshop, so he might have heard something.
Very well, I'll ask him.
But ask with tact.
Ask
I don't want him
with
getting
tact.
offended. And I prefer you not to mention me at all.
I'll try to think of something.
So, in other words,
That's
don't
all.
be Henry threatening people with swords and violence like I've been doing the last few conversations, because I finally started to get intimidating enough with my looks that I've been able to use that as a bargaining chip.
Take care now.
Alright, so we're going back to the monastery. Sort of. I love how Lady Steph's been giving me the cold shoulder ever since she got what she wanted for me. I think she just used me. I think in 9 months Henry's gonna have an unexpected surprise. And then she's gonna try to claim child support for the next 18 years. She's like, "Oh, Henry, you're in the service of a lord." Oh, where's this guy? He must be upstairs. Oh, this is the guy we talked to about the crown. The Moldavite or Maldavite or
I
whatever
hope
it's
I can
called.
be of help to you, knight.
How goes the work, Master?
Getting there, getting there. You need something, my boy?
What are you doing here, anyway?
You're in an
Hector
engraver's
says child
shop,
support
my boy.
would be one chicken,
We're
one pig, and a half
engraving,
cow in the Middle
of
Ages.
course.
Yeah, but engraving what? And what's it used for?
Oh, we engrave wood and stone as well as metal. Here in the monastery, it's mostly about decoration.
You've got quite a large workshop, Master. You don't do all the work alone, surely?
I'm usually here with my apprentice,
My
Florian.
apprentice.
Of course, by simple observation, you'll note that this is not currently the case, and I'm here alone, which means that either I'm a liar or something out of the ordinary has occurred.
I see. I think. So what's happened to Florian?
He shares the fate of the pharaohs for today. The fifth scourge of Egypt did smite him, the plague. Or so his message advised me.
Oh, he called
Jesus
in sick
Christ,
to
The
work.
plague?
He called in sick
Do
to
remain
work.
calm. I'm quite certain the plague from which Florian is suffering wasn't a judgment from on high. Or if it was a judgment on excessive drinking. I'm told such an ailment can be of truly biblical proportions.
That's hilarious. He called in sick to work with a parchment. Negan says, "Is anybody worried about KCD2 bugs and glitches?" Here's the reality, guys. If you're not a content creator, if you are not a streamer or a content creator, do not buy games on day one. Never. Never buy day one games. Never, ever, ever. Never. Do not buy games on day one. Unless you are a content creator whose livelihood depends on getting views and traffic and needing to be one of the first people covering a game because that's your job. I have to suffer through endless arrays of bugs and patches. Most of those things are not game breaking, but definitely glitchy, janky, buggy gameplay because it's my job. The most recent example of this would be Stalker 2. Absolutely fun time, great time playing that game. I put 60 hours into that game before they patched. I got a 63-hour playthrough out of that first experience. They patched the game when I was 3 hours away from the end. I played that game largely without any patches for my first experience. So, like, all of the balance patch shit didn't happen until I was basically done with the game. I didn't have any crashes and stuff, but there was texture flickering. There was pitch black darkness in places because the HD lighting wasn't working. Um, the easy mode, the story mode, was broken and wasn't working, so I was actually playing on a harder difficulty than I wanted to play. The economy was broken, so I wasn't able to upgrade any of my gear the way I was supposed to be able to upgrade my gear. It was a broken, buggy, hot mess. Still a great time. I had an absolutely fun experience, but I was 60 hours in before they launched their first patch. That's normal. Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of people seem to forget that Baldur's Gate 3, which won every single Game of the Year award ever, most awarded game of all time, had a first patch that launched roughly 1 month after the game launched, which had more than 1,000 fixes. That was a game that spent 3 years in early access. And even they, after 3 years of early access, even they had more than 1,000 bugs in their very first patch. So never, ever, ever play games on the first day if you can afford to wait. If you're just a normal gamer and you have other games that you can play, and you have a backlog on Epic and a backlog on Steam and a backlog on GOG and your Xbox and your PlayStation, all that stuff, just wait. You're not missing anything. There's no FOMO, right? The only reason you should be playing day one is if you're a streamer or a content creator, or you're trying to become a streamer and a content creator, and so you're trying to get content out when it's relevant. Everybody else, just wait. Just wait. Because there are always, 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 always going to be bugs that happen at launch. And the reason for that is simple. Games are complex. And especially if a company has opted to not have an early access, again, Baldur's Gate 3, 3 years of early access, they still had 1,000 bugs once the game got out into the wild. And the reason for that is because no matter how good you are, no matter how big your team is, no matter how much money you have, you cannot account for the millions of permutations of chipsets, GPU sets, RAM types, amount of RAM, hardware that people have, the software people are running. You cannot account for all of that. Even with consoles, which are far better to balance because most people are running the same machines, people run different controllers. People have off-market controllers in some cases. There are all of these things that affect the optimization and performance across the millions of devices that people are going to be playing these games on. And a company, no matter how big they are, no matter how much money they are, they cannot account for everything, especially if they are not doing an early access. So, is KCD2 going to have bugs? Absolutely, it's going to have bugs. They have not done an early access. Now, they are fairly confident in their product so far. But if you've watched the developer streams, even the developer streams they were playing through in the last part of the last year, they were running a build from August which still had bugs in it. Um, they just shipped the review version of the game like last week, and people are playing through that right now. And I guarantee you there will be a day one patch. But let's just say, for example, let's say they send out 1,000 review codes. That's 1,000 people playing the game. Awesome. They're going to find 350 bugs from 1,000 people playing. The game goes live. Suddenly that game goes out to 3 million people, 4 million people, 5 million people. I don't know what the sales are going to be like on Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. But the moment the game goes out to millions of players, that's when the bug reports start coming in. And that's when we start finding out that, oh, the 4090 GTX with the chipset, blah, 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 and the AMD processor and this type of RAM and all of that's bugged, and you've got 70,000 people who have that combination. So 70,000 players are going to have that bug. And then here's these people over here trying to play with a 17-year-old potato that's running an Intel chipset driver and doesn't even have a GPU, and they're having these issues. And this person over here is using some $20 controller they bought off of eBay that doesn't work. The driver chipset doesn't jive, and so their controller won't work, and that's causing fatal crashes, blah, 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 blah. The moment a game goes live and it's out there in the hands of millions of players, there are now millions and millions of bug reports flowing in. And the company has to sort through that. It doesn't matter who the company is, how big the company is. That is the reality of launching these massive games, these complex beasts in the current age we live in. And it always drives me nuts when people are like, oh, games used to launch in such a perfect state back in 1992. Yeah, when the game was 75 kilobytes, whatever the KB, I forget what KB stands for now. My brain is frying down. Um, Back when games came on little 3.5-inch discs, and you had two discs to put in the drive, yeah, games used to be a lot simpler because there was 25 lines of code. Now there are 25 million lines of code. So, you can't compare. Um, and all games launch buggy. Yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 is the perfect example of a game that had a really buggy launch, and then they spent 2 years getting Cyberpunk 2.0 out the door. 2.0 came out, completely different game. Absolutely amazing experience in 2.0 versus the launch version of the game. Phantom Liberty, one of the best expansions I've ever played. But that's a perfect example of a super complex game that launched with horrible amounts of bugs. No Man's Sky, that's another great example. How's it going? That's another great example. No Man's Sky. Here we are 9 years later. No Man's Sky has completely changed around. I remember reading like 2 months ago, I think it was after Worlds Part 2, they have finally on Steam gone to a overwhelmingly positive rating after like 8 years of that game bombing when it came out. Um, so every game that launches from Baldur's Gate 3 to No Man's Sky to Cyberpunk 2072, yes, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It will absolutely launch with bugs. So I'm going to clip this out because that was a great little discussion point this morning. You should not be playing games on day one unless you're a content creator. Because if you get triggered by bugs and you're someone who's like, I'm not going to play this buggy hot mess, I'm going to wait 2 months until the game gets patched, then wait. Just wait. Don't be one of those people who goes on the internet and bitches and goes on Reddit and throws a hissy fit about how, oh, the game launched and it has all these bugs. Yeah, that's how games launch these days. That's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the nature of game development. It's the nature of gaming in the modern era. These are complex machines. They are never going to be flawless. Do you know how many billions of dollars? Um, Look at SpaceX. Do you know how many billions of dollars they have spent sending up rockets that exploded before they started getting the rockets that could actually go back and then come back and safely land on their own? The equations and the programming to make that happen with the millions of variables, the company was willing to spend billions of dollars to get through and go through the iterations of blowing up rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket to get it right. Billions of dollars. Game development is a similarly complex beast in terms of programming and coding because of all the variations of chipsets and GPU sets and everything else. Companies don't have billions of dollars to spend iterating over 20 years to get it right. They get it good enough, then they launch it, and then they fix what they need to fix to get it working as good as possible. But even then, I guarantee you, you'll find people today who are playing No Man's Sky who are still suffering crashes because of X, Y, or Z reasons. And they're out there ranting on the internet about how, No Man's Sky is this horrible piece of trash game, blah, 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 blah. Eh. Don't buy games on day one if you're someone who's going to bitch and moan about bugs. Just wait. Unless you're a content creator, and then you have to do it. Because I will be suffering through whatever bugs are out there on day one. We'll clip that out for YouTube later.
What's he like, your apprentice, Florian?
I'm afraid that his exuberant youth has taken its toll. He's been acting strangely of late. I fear he has delusions of persecution.
I don't really know what you mean, at all.
Recently, for example, he told me that someone was following him. And the very next day he bought a padlock from the blacksmith and locked up his chest, as though I would ever sneak into it. In any case, why the interest? Are you looking for him?
Something like that.
May I ask why?
I have a message for him.
A message? Who would be interested in that wastrel? Other than his furious and deeply disappointed master, of course. About your question, you'll find him at home, no doubt feverishly dying. He sleeps in the baker's cellar.
Ah, thank you. Does Florian have any enemies?
A man such as he certainly owes money at every turn, and the parents of local girls are undoubtedly displeased with his attempts to propagate. However, most recently it was that fury from the baths who accosted him in quite a spectacular rage.
Correct me if I'm wrong. GTA 6 is only launching on consoles. So it's not also launching on PC. So GTA 6 is a bad example to use because they're not being required to polish their game for the variations that I was just talking about. They're only creating 2 versions of the game. Actually, I think 3 versions: the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Series S, and the PS5. So they don't have to worry, Rockstar doesn't have to worry about the millions of permutations of chipsets and GPU sets and RAM sets that people have with PCs. They only have to make it work on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. That's it. Yeah, but releasing it later on the PC means that they then have the time to get a really good product out the door that gets glowing reviews and sells tens of millions of copies, and then they come back and say, okay, now let's slowly work on the PC port, right? And they're still going to have bugs. They're still going to have issues. Correct, Megan. If a company sat on it and just worked on it until it was perfect, we would never get games. We would be waiting 20 years for every single game to be released. That's just not the way it works. Deadlines have to be put out because there's a finite amount of money to be put into game development. Whether it's $250 million or $2 million, there's a finite amount of money that can be thrown at a project, and a company has to get a game as good as it possibly can. So, um, publishers are the problem with deadlines. That's not, it's yes, but no. Yes and no. It's not just about publishers. If I give you $250 million, you can bet your fucking ass I'm going to be riding you like hell on everything. I'm going to be riding your ass. Where's the game? When's the game? Ship that fucking game. I gave you $250 million. I need to recoup my losses. I don't want to hear excuses. I don't care if somebody got sick or somebody had a baby or blah, 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 blah. Those are excuses. Hire other people, find contractors, find a way to make it work. Like, when it comes to, like, I think a lot of you who like to complain about publishers, I say you being everybody out there, like, probably should rephrase that. A lot of gamers don't understand the realities of running a business, right? It's okay to have empathy for people and workers and crunch and all of these issues that plague the industry. Those are signs of mismanagement. 100% there is mismanagement when it comes to game development. But it is an absolutely naive point of view to say that it's just a problem with the publishers. That is just not true. Not entirely, anyway. If it's literally that's how business works. Like, just because I gave you money doesn't mean you have an unlimited amount of time to make something with the money I gave you. No, there are deadlines. I need to recoup my losses because I have employees that I need to pay. And so I need the things that I invest in need to provide me with an ROI within a timely manner. Otherwise, my people don't get paid. And so it's this never-ending cycle of you're what is the phrase? You're robbing from Peter to pay Paul or something like that. Like, you're borrowing from here to do this, you're borrowing from that to do this, and there's this cycle of everybody needs to get paid, Everybody needs to complete things on time. Everything needs to be done within a timely fashion. And the only exemption to this is a project like um, uh, Star Citizen, where they just have like this unlimited crowdfunding model, which is unique to their situation. It is not something that the rest of the industry has been able to replicate. They're the only ones who've been able to successfully continue to move goalposts over and over and over and over and over. Um, it's yeah, game development is complex, and it's totally not just the publisher's fault. Like that's not, you can't say that. That's an extremely naive point of view that does not that shows absolutely zero understanding of how business actually works. I'm someone who has ran multiple businesses. I still maintain two LLCs. Um, like there are so many complexities to managing businesses and having employees and investors and bankers and all these different things, and everybody's fingers in the pie, and they have deadlines for legitimate reasons. And so, Cyberpunk is a great example of a project that, yeah, it could have used another 6 months of polish before they pushed it out. But guess what? It wasn't going to work. Like they had to push a product out. Could Stalker 2 have used another 6 months of polish? Listen to the developers and what they went through to make that game through the war-torn country that they lived in, shipping their team out of the country. And they literally said, yes, the game could have used another 6 months of polish, but our team was broken emotionally, morally. Our team was broken. We had to launch the product. We could not push ourselves anymore. Yeah, A Life was not working the way we wanted it to work. Sorry, guys, but guess what? We had to get a product out the door. I respect that. Like, anybody who doesn't respect that, anybody who's like, oh, it should have been a perfect product when it launched, you're an asshole. Like, literally, you're an asshole for thinking like, where's your empathy? Where's your understanding of business complexities? Where's your understanding of global politics? Were you getting bombed going to work? Were you having your home get shelled? Like, come on. Like, Jesus. Rant over, guys.
A woman from the baths? What did she do?
The harpy nearly tore all Florian's hair out. I don't frequently feel sorry for my ne'er-do-well apprentice, but on that occasion I made an exception.
Do you have any idea why she did it?
She was screaming about some girl, some flighty bath-maid, Esther. I would say that Florian had felt the joys of spring and acted accordingly, although one would have thought they'd be used to that sort of thing at the bathhouse.
You would think. Thiner says people who speak like that have never had to work for the good things in life. Yes, that's a position of entitlement when people's. I had someone when we were talking about Stalker 2 back when the game was being launched and we were playing through it. Someone came on one of my videos and made this nasty little rant about how it shouldn't matter. This is literally, I'm paraphrasing here, but they said it shouldn't matter that they were being bombed while making the game. It shouldn't matter that they were going through a war, because guess what? Developers in Canada and the United States still have to go through hardships. What about the guy whose mom died? What about the person who just gave birth? What about the person whose brother died? What about the person whose pet died? And I'm like, are you really trying to say that that someone's loved one passing away from old age or someone giving birth is the same thing as having your house bombed? Are you really trying to say that right now? Because if you are, your worldview is entirely fucking skewed by entitlement. You just don't understand the reality of the real world. Like, there is a huge difference between I need a sick day, right? I need to take maternity leave because I'm having a baby. So I need 2 months, 3 months off of work because of maternity leave. That's different than someone who has to literally take everything they own, get on a bus, and move to another country to keep building the game that they're building because the place where they were living was getting bombed. I would like to see you have to do that same thing and then come back to me and tell me that that's the same exact situation. It's not. And people who say those types of things on the internet have zero
Thank you.
empathy,
I'll
zero
leave you to
real
your
world
work.
experience. They've
Good
only
luck
ever
to you.
known McDonald's and Walmart and fast food and air conditioning, and you know, it's goddamn, there's some really ignorant people out there in the real world.